The warning lights turned red across every screen on the command station. Admiral stood from his chair, his 4 eyes narrowing at the display before him. Something had just entered the Empire's most protected sector of space, something that should not be there. "Report," he commanded, his voice cold and sharp. The young officer at the sensor station trembled as he read the data. "Admiral, a vessel has appeared at coordinates 794. It came out of nowhere. No jump signature we recognize. No warning, it just appeared." Walked closer to the main screen. The ship floating in their space was unlike anything he had seen in his 300 years of service. It was black, shaped like a blade and covered in strange markings. The design was old, very old, but also somehow advanced in ways that made no sense. "Identify the vessel," ordered. The officer's fingers moved quickly across his controls. Then he stopped. His face went pale. "Admiral, the computer has found a match, but it cannot be correct." "Speaker." "The ship, it matches records from the archive, records that are over 800 years old." The officer swallowed hard. "It is a human warship." The entire command center went silent. Every officer stopped working. Every breath seemed to pause, felt something he had not felt in centuries: fear. "That is impossible," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The humans were destroyed in the Great Purge. Every world, every colony, every ship. We made certain of it." "I have checked 3 times, Admiral. The match is exact. That is a human vessel." Stared at the screen. The ship just floated there, motionless, as if waiting, as if watching. 800 years ago, the Empire had made a decision. The humans were too dangerous. They were too adaptable, too creative, too unpredictable. In just 2,000 years, they had spread across hundreds of worlds. They had built fleets that rivaled the oldest civilizations. They had technology that they should not have developed for another 10,000 years. The Empire had decided that humanity needed to end before it became unstoppable. It took 50 years and cost billions of lives, but the purge was considered complete. Every human world burned, every human ship destroyed. The species was erased from the galaxy, and all records of the war were sealed. Children were taught that humans were a myth, a legend, a warning about what happens to species that grow too fast. But now, floating in the heart of space, was proof that the legends were real. On board the human vessel, Captain Park Jin stood on the bridge and tried to understand where they were. The jump had been desperate, unplanned, a last attempt to escape certain death. He had not expected to survive. "Status report," he said calmly, though his heart was racing. His engineer, a young woman named, looked up from her station. "The jump drive is damaged. We can make maybe one more jump, but I would not trust it. Life support is stable. Weapons are online. Shields are at 60%. "Where are we?" His navigation officer, Ho, frowned at his screens. "I am not sure, Captain. The star charts do not match anything in our database. We are somewhere we have never been." Jin nodded slowly. The Eternal Soul was the last ship of the human fleet. 3 months ago, they had been running from hunters. For 800 years, the survivors of Earth had been hiding in the dark spaces between galaxies, moving from place to place, never staying long enough to be found. But the hunters had found them anyway. The colony ship that held 50,000 humans was destroyed. The defense fleet was torn apart. Only the Eternal Soul escaped, jumping blindly into unknown space. "Captain," said his communications officer, "I am detecting signals, many signals. We are in an active star system. There are stations, ships, and planetary communications everywhere." Jin felt cold. They had jumped into the middle of civilization, the wrong civilization. "Can you identify the language?" he asked. Listened carefully. Her face changed. "Captain, it is, we are in space." The bridge went quiet. Every crew member knew that name. Every human child learned that name before they learned anything else. The Empire. the ones who had burned Earth, the ones who had hunted humanity to near extinction, the enemy that had forced them to hide in darkness for 8 centuries. And now, by terrible chance, the Eternal Soul had jumped directly into their territory. "We need to leave," Ho said quickly, "now before they find us." "The drive needs 6 hours to charge," replied. "We are not going anywhere." Jin stared at the screen showing the space around them. He could see distant ships moving, stations floating near planets, a whole empire that wanted his people dead. "They already know we are here," he said quietly. "A ship appearing from nowhere in their protected space. They detected us the moment we arrived." "Then what do we do?" asked. Jin thought about the 50,000 people who had died 3 months ago. He thought about his parents, who had told him stories of Earth before they passed away. He thought about 800 years of running, hiding, and dying in the darkness. "We do nothing," he said. "We wait, we prepare, and we see what happens next." Admiral made a decision. He would not report this to the High Council. Not yet. First, he needed to know more. He needed to be certain. "Send a probe," he ordered. "Get me a closer look at that ship. I want to see everything." The probe launched and flew toward the human vessel. It took 20 minutes to cross the distance. The entire command center watched in tense silence as the probe's cameras activated and began sending images. The ship was beautiful in a terrifying way. Its hull was covered in markings that looked like writing, but no one could read them. Its weapons were hidden, but the scanners detected energy signatures that made no sense. The technology was beyond anything the Empire had. "How is this possible?" whispered. "They were primitives when we destroyed them. How could they have advanced this far?" "Admiral," the sensor officer said, "the probe is detecting life signs. There are approximately 400 beings on that ship, all human." 400 humans, alive, after 800 years. Felt the fear grow stronger. If 400 humans survived, how many more were out there? Where had they been hiding? What had they been doing all this time? "Send a message to the High Council," he finally said. Tell them we have a situation." On the Eternal Soul detected the probe. "Captain, they sent a scanner. It is circling us." Jin nodded. "Let them look. They will see that we are not running. They will see that we are not afraid." "Are we not afraid?" Ho asked honestly. Jin smiled sadly. "Of course we are, but they do not need to know that." The hours passed slowly. The crew worked on repairs. They checked weapons. They prepared for whatever would come next. Nobody spoke about the obvious truth. They were 400 people in one ship, surrounded by an empire of trillions. But they were human, and humans had survived worse. As the 6th hour approached, suddenly sat up straight. "Captain, I am receiving a transmission. It is directed at us." "What does it say?" Listen, then translated. It says, "Unknown vessel, identify yourself immediately or be destroyed." Jin stood and straightened his uniform. He looked at his crew. These were good people, brave people. They deserved a captain who would not show fear. "Open a channel," he said. "Let me respond." Open the channel. Jin took a deep breath. "This is Captain Park Jin of the human warship Eternal Soul. We are here by accident. We mean no harm, but if you attack us, we will defend ourselves." He paused, then added something that came from deep in his heart. "We are the children of Earth. We survived your war. We survived 800 years in the darkness. We are still here, and we are not going to disappear." The message ended. The bridge was silent. Somewhere out there, Admiral was listening. Somewhere out there, the Empire was realizing that their greatest fear had come true. The humans were back. The message from Captain Park Jin spread faster than any weapon could travel. Within 1 hour, every major station in the Empire had received a copy. Within 3 hours, it had reached the capital world. Within 6 hours, the entire galaxy knew. The humans were alive. High Chancellor sat in his private chamber and listened to the message for the 20th time. His old hands trembled as the human's voice filled the room. "We are the children of Earth. We survived your war. We survived 800 years in the darkness. We are still here." Had been a young officer during the final years of the Purge. He remembered the human worlds burning. He remembered the screams on the communication channels as human cities fell. He remembered the relief when it was finally over. But he also remembered something else. He remembered how hard the humans had fought. He remembered how they had refused to surrender even when there was no hope. He remembered how they had made the mighty empire pay for every kilometer of space with blood. Now they were back and was afraid. The council chamber was full when he arrived. Representatives from every sector of the empire sat in their assigned places, talking in worried voices. When entered, they all went silent. "You have all heard the message," said, taking his seat at the head of the table. "One human warship has appeared in Sector 7. We do not know how it got there. We do not know where it came from. We do not know if there are more." "One ship is not a threat," said General, the commander of the Imperial fleet. "We can destroy it in minutes." "Can we?" asked another council member, a historian named. "Our records from the Purge are incomplete, but I have studied what remains. Human warships were unlike anything we had faced before. They had weapons that could break through our shields. They had engines that could outrun our fastest ships. One human warship destroyed an entire battle group at the Battle of the Red Nebula." "That was 800 years ago," replied with anger. "We have advanced since then." "So have they," said quietly. "If they survived for 8 centuries, they did not do it by standing still." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what was saying. The humans had been dangerous 800 years ago. If they had continued to develop during their time in hiding, they might be even more dangerous now. On the Eternal Soul, Jin met with his senior officers in the small conference room. They had been waiting for almost 12 hours now and nothing had happened. No attack, no communication, just silence. "They are afraid," said Lieutenant Commander 1, the ship's tactical officer. "They received your message and they do not know what to do." "We should use this time to escape," Ho insisted. "The jump drive is ready. We can leave before they respond." Jin shook his head. "And go where? We do not know this region of space. We could jump into something worse. And our people need more than just survival. They need hope." "What do you mean?" asked. Jin stood and walked to the small window that showed the stars outside. "For 800 years we have been running. We have been hiding. We have been dying slowly in the darkness between galaxies. Our population shrinks with each generation. Our ships grow old. Our hope fades." He turned to face his officers. "But now we are here, in the heart of the enemy's territory, and they are afraid of us. One ship, 400 people, and we have made an entire empire pause." "What are you suggesting?" one asked carefully. "I am suggesting that we stop running. I am suggesting that we remind the galaxy that humanity still exists. I am suggesting that we give our people something they have not had in centuries. A future." The officers looked at each other. They understood what their captain was saying. It was dangerous. It was possibly suicidal. But it was also the first real plan they had heard in a very long time. "How do we do this?" asked. Jin smiled. "We broadcast our message to everyone, not just to every species, to every world. We tell them who we are. We tell them what was done to us. We tell them that we survived." "They will not allow that," Ho said. "They cannot stop us. Not quickly enough. Our communication systems are more advanced than theirs. By the time they react, our message will have reached 1,000 worlds." The plan was bold. The plan was terrifying, but every officer in that room voted to support it. In the great cities of the capital, the news of the human ship had created chaos. Citizens who had grown up believing humans were a myth now learned that the myths were real. Parents who had told their children scary stories about the ghost species now realized those stories were based on truth. The entertainment networks tried to calm the public. They brought in experts who explained that one ship was not a threat. They showed images of the massive fleet and promised that the Empire was safe. But in the darker corners of the network, other messages spread. Old records from the purge that had been hidden for centuries were being shared. Videos of human soldiers fighting against impossible odds. Stories of human ships that refused to die. Accounts of the terrible weapons humans had used to defend their homes. The people of the Empire began to remember why their ancestors had feared the humans so much. On worlds far from the capital, other species heard the news with different feelings. The Empire had conquered many civilizations over the centuries. They had taken worlds, enslaved populations, and crushed any resistance. To these conquered peoples, the humans were not a threat. They were a possibility. On the forest world a young rebel named listened to the human captain's message on a hidden communication device. His people, had been slaves of the Empire for 400 years. They had tried to fight back many times, but always failed. "We survived your war," the human voice said. "We survived 800 years in the darkness. We are still here." Felt something stir in his chest. If the humans could survive against the full power of the Empire, then maybe there was hope for his people too. He was not the only one thinking this way. Admiral received new orders from the Council. He was to surround the human ship with his fleet but not attack yet. The Council wanted to observe. They wanted to learn. They wanted to understand what they were dealing with before they acted. Gathered his officers and explained the situation. "We will form a containment sphere around the vessel. 50 ships should be enough. No one fires unless I give the order." "Admiral," one of his captains asked, "what if the humans try to escape?" "Then we destroy them," said, "but I do not think they will run." The human captain's message was not the message of someone planning to flee. It was a statement, a declaration. He wanted us to know that humans still exist. Why would he do that? Thought for a long moment. Because he wants the galaxy to know. He wants everyone to know that the purge failed. He wants to embarrass us, to show that we are not as powerful as we claim. That seems like a small victory for such a big risk. For us, yes. But for a species that has been hiding in darkness for 8 centuries, being seen again might be the greatest victory of all. The fleet moved into position around the Eternal Soul. 50 warships formed a sphere, their weapons locked onto the small human vessel. From the bridge of his ship, Jin watched them arrive. "We are surrounded," Ho reported. 50 vessels, all heavily armed. "Is the broadcast ready?" Jin asked. Nodded. "Ready on your command, Captain." Jin took a deep breath. This was the moment. Once they sent this message, there would be no going back. They would have to respond. The galaxy would have to react. Everything would change. "Send it," he said. The broadcast began. Jin's face appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds. His voice reached billions of ears. "My name is Park Jin. I am the captain of the human warship Eternal Soul. 800 years ago, the Empire tried to destroy my species. They burned our worlds. They killed our families. They thought they had ended us forever." He paused, letting the words settle. "They were wrong. We survived. In the darkness between galaxies where no one thought to look, humanity held on. We built new ships. We raised new generations. We never forgot who we were." In the council chamber on the Capitol, every member watched in stunned silence. On and his fellow rebels gathered around their hidden screen, their eyes wide with wonder. On 100 other worlds, conquered people stopped what they were doing and listened. "I am not here to start a war," Jin continued. "We have had enough of war, but I am here to tell you the truth. The Empire lied to you. They told you humans were extinct. They told you we were monsters. They told you these things because they were afraid." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. They were afraid because they knew what we truly are. We are survivors, we are builders, we are dreamers, and we never give up. No matter how dark things get, no matter how hopeless it seems, we keep going. That is what makes us human. The broadcast ended. For a moment the galaxy was silent. Then everything began to change. Emperor watched the human broadcast from his throne room. He was the supreme ruler of the empire, the most powerful being in the known galaxy. His word was law across 10,000 worlds. His military commanded billions of soldiers and hundreds of thousands of ships. And yet, as he listened to the human captain speak, he felt something he had not felt in his entire life. He felt small. "Destroy them," he commanded, "now." His advisors rushed to obey. Messages were sent to Admiral. The order was simple. The human ship must be eliminated immediately. No negotiations, no warnings, just destruction. But when fleet opened fire, something unexpected happened. The Eternal Soul was no longer there. "Where did they go?" screamed at his sensor officers. "Find them." "Admiral, we cannot." The ship simply vanished. There was no jump signature, no engine activation. One moment they were there and the next moment they were gone. Stared at the empty space where the human ship had been. This was impossible. Ships could not just disappear. The laws of physics did not allow it. But humans, he remembered, had never cared much about what was supposed to be impossible. On board the Eternal Soul, Captain Jin allowed himself a small smile. The cloaking system had worked perfectly. It was humanity's greatest technological achievement, developed during the long years of hiding. The ability to become completely invisible, not just to sensors but to all forms of detection. "They cannot see us," reported from her station. "We are completely hidden." "Where do we go now, Captain?" Ho asked. Jin looked at the star map. They were still in space, surrounded by enemies. But they had one advantage that no one else had. They could move without being seen. "We go deeper," he said, "into the heart of their empire. We find their secrets. We find their weaknesses. And we let the galaxy know that we are still here, still watching, still surviving." The Eternal Soul moved silently through space, passing within kilometers of warships without being detected. It was like being a ghost, able to see everything while remaining invisible. The news of the ship's disappearance spread even faster than the original broadcast. The Empire claimed that they had destroyed the humans. They showed footage of their ships firing into empty space and declared victory. But no one believed them. On world after world, people whispered about the ghost ship, the human vessel that could appear and disappear at will, the surviving remnant of a species that refused to die. Some called it a miracle, others called it a nightmare, but everyone talked about it. On gathered his rebel group in the deep forest. There were only 12 of them, survivors of years of failed uprisings. They had almost given up hope, but now everything was different. "The humans escaped," he told them. 50 warships could not stop one human vessel. They have technology we have never seen before." "What does this mean for us?" asked an older rebel named. "It means we are not alone anymore. It means the Empire is not unbeatable. If the humans can survive against them, then maybe we can too." The rebels looked at each other. For the first time in years, there was something other than despair in their eyes. There was hope. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On the industrial world of, factory workers began to whisper about strikes. On the ocean planet of, the fish-like natives started meeting in secret to discuss resistance. On dozens of conquered worlds, the news of the human ship sparked something that the Empire had worked hard to crush. It sparked rebellion. Emperor understood the danger immediately. He called an emergency meeting of his military council. "Find that ship," he ordered. "I do not care how many resources it takes. I do not care how many ships you need. Find it and destroy it. Every day that human vessel remains free, our grip on the galaxy weakens." Your Majesty, General said carefully, we have searched the entire sector. There is no trace of the ship. Our best scientists believe the humans have developed some form of perfect cloaking technology. Then develop a way to detect it. We are trying, Your Majesty, but this technology is beyond anything we have ever seen. It could take years to understand, let alone counter. Slammed his hand on the table. We do not have years. Already there are reports of unrest on 17 worlds. The conquered species are getting bold. They think we are weak. Perhaps, suggested a quiet voice, we should consider a different approach. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was Counselor, the oldest member of the council. He had served 3 emperors and was known for his wisdom. What approach? Asked coldly. The humans said they do not want war. Perhaps we should take them at their word. Perhaps we should try to talk to them. Talk to them? After what they said, they embarrassed us in front of the entire galaxy. Yes, they did. But destroying them will not undo that embarrassment. It will only prove that we are afraid. However, if we could reach an agreement with them, bring them into the Empire peacefully, we would show strength, not fear. Considered this. He did not like it, but he could see the logic. Killing the humans would make them martyrs, but controlling them would make the Empire look powerful and merciful at the same time. Very well, he said finally. We will try to contact them, but if they refuse our offer, we will hunt them to the ends of the galaxy. The message went out on all frequencies. The Empire offered to negotiate with the human ship. They promised safe passage and fair discussion. They asked only for a meeting. On the Eternal Soul, the senior officers debated what to do. It is obviously a trap, one said. They want to find us so they can destroy us. Maybe, Jin replied. But what if it is real? What if they genuinely want to talk? After 800 years of hunting us, Ho laughed bitterly. They do not want peace. They want us dead. They want us dead because they are afraid of us, said thoughtfully. What if we could change that fear into something else? What do you mean? The captain's broadcast worked. It changed how the galaxy sees us. Maybe a meeting could change how they see us too, not as monsters to be destroyed, but as people to be dealt with. Jin listened to all the arguments. His crew was divided. Half wanted to stay hidden and continue their invisible war. Half thought they should take the risk of negotiation. In the end, the decision was his. We will meet them, he said, but on our terms, not theirs. We choose the location, we choose the time, and we make sure they know that if this is a trap, we will make them pay for it. The response was sent. The Eternal Soul agreed to meet, but only in neutral space, near the edge of the galaxy where the Empire's power was weakest, and only with a single ship, no fleet. To everyone's surprise, the Empire agreed. 3 days later, the Eternal Soul near a small moon in an empty system. Across from it, a single diplomatic vessel waited. On board the ship was Counselor himself, chosen for the mission because of his reputation for wisdom and fairness. They are here, one of his aides reported. The human ship has appeared. Looked at the screen. The human vessel was smaller than he expected, but beautiful in a strange way. Its dark hull reflected the distant stars like a mirror. Its design was elegant and deadly at the same time. Open a channel, he said. Let us see what the humans have to say. Captain Jin appeared on the screen. He looked tired but determined. Behind him could see the bridge of the human ship, full of young officers who watched with a mixture of fear and defiance. Counselor Jin said, I am Captain Park Jin, thank you for coming. Captain, thank you for agreeing to meet. I come with a sincere offer of peace from the Emperor. With respect, Counselor, the last time the Empire offered peace to humanity, they used the ceasefire to position their fleets for the final attack. You will forgive me if I am skeptical. Nodded slowly. I understand our history with your species is difficult, but I hope we can move past it. Move past it, Jin's voice hardened. You killed billions of people, you burned you hunted us across the galaxy for centuries. That is not something you move past. Then what do you want, Captain? Revenge? War? You have one ship against an empire you cannot possibly win. Jin smiled, and there was something frightening in that smile. You are right that we cannot defeat your military, but we do not need to. We have already won something far more important. What is that? Hope. Your empire controls through fear. You make people believe that resistance is impossible, that your power is absolute. But we have shown them that it is not. One ship, 400 people, and we have made the mighty empire look weak. Felt a chill run through him. The human captain was right. The damage was already done. Every conquered world was now wondering if maybe, just maybe, the empire could be defeated. What would it take, asked carefully, to end this? What do you truly want? Jin's expression changed. The hardness faded, replaced by something that looked almost like sadness. We want what any people want. A home, a future, the right to exist without fear. We have spent 800 years hiding in the darkness. We are tired, but we will not surrender our existence for a false peace. Then let us negotiate a real peace, said. Tell me what you need and I will try to make it happen. For the first time in 8 centuries, humans began to talk. The negotiations lasted for 7 days. Counselor and Captain Jin met each day, talking for hours about the past, the present, and what the future might look like. It was difficult. Both sides carried centuries of pain and distrust, but slowly, very slowly, they began to understand each other. Learned things about humans that the old records had never mentioned. He learned about their art, their music, their dreams. He learned about the children who had been born during the long exile, growing up in the darkness between galaxies, never knowing what it felt like to stand on a real world under a real sun. He learned about the sacrifices parents had made to keep their children alive, about the teachers who had preserved human knowledge, about the engineers who had kept ancient ships running for centuries beyond their expected. Jin learned things about that surprised him as well. He learned that not all of them had supported the purge. He learned that there had been protests, that some had called the genocide wrong and had been punished for speaking out. He learned that himself had been a young voice against the war, though his protests had accomplished nothing. Why did you do it? Jin asked on the 4th day. Why did your people decide to destroy us? Was quiet for a long moment. Fear, he finally said. Your species was evolving too fast. In just 2,000 years, you went from primitive creatures to a galactic power. Our scientists projected that within another 1,000 years, you would surpass us in every way. Our leaders could not accept that. So they chose to kill us all. Yes, it was presented as self-defense, as necessary for the survival of the empire. Most people believed it. Most people still believe it. Do you believe it? Met Jin's eyes. I believe it was wrong. I believe we created this situation by our own actions. If we had welcomed humanity instead of fearing them, perhaps we would be partners now instead of enemies. These conversations were not easy. There were moments of anger, of accusation, of old wounds being torn open again. But both men kept coming back to the table. Both men wanted to find a way forward. While the negotiations continued, the galaxy was changing. On's small rebel group had grown. What started as 12 people hiding in the forest had become hundreds, then thousands. They were not fighting yet. They were organizing. They were preparing. They were waiting to see what would happen between the humans and the Empire. Similar movements were growing on other worlds. The conquered species had spent generations believing that resistance was impossible. Now they were not so sure. The human ship had shown them that they could be challenged. The human broadcast had reminded them that they did not have to accept their fate. The Empire was aware of this unrest. Reports came in daily about meetings, about protests, about growing defiance. Emperor grew more impatient with each passing day. "This negotiation is a mistake," he told his council. "Every day we talk to the humans, our subjects grow bolder. We need to act decisively." "Your Majesty," General said, "our forces are ready. On your command, we can attack the human ship at the negotiation site." "But Counselor is there," another advisor pointed out. "If we attack, he will likely be killed." Shrugged has served his purpose. He got the humans to reveal their location. That is all that matters. The order was given. A fleet of 100 ships began moving toward the negotiation site. They would arrive in 3 days. On the Eternal Soul detected the movement. "Captain, I am reading a large fleet heading in our direction, over 100 vessels." Jin felt his heart grow cold. He had hoped that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. He had started to believe that peace might be possible, but it seemed that some things never changed. "How long until they arrive?" "Approximately 72 hours. Jin nodded. "Continue monitoring. Do not alert Counselor yet. Let me think." He retreated to his small cabin and sat alone in the darkness. He thought about his crew, 400 people who trusted him with their lives. He thought about the other human survivors, scattered across the darkness of space, waiting to hear if there was hope. He thought about everything his people had suffered and sacrificed to survive. He could run. The cloaking system would let them escape easily. They could disappear back into the darkness and continue hiding as they had for 8 centuries. But something had changed in Jin during these negotiations. Talking with had reminded him of something important. Survival was not enough. His people needed more than just existence. They needed a real life. They needed a future. Running would give them more time, but it would not give them hope. The next morning, Jin contacted and told him about the fleet. The old counselor's face went pale. "I did not know," said. "I swear to you, Captain, I did not know about this." "I believe you," Jin replied, "but it does not change the situation. Your emperor has decided that peace is not an option." "What will you do?" Jin smiled sadly. "What humans always do, Counselor. We will fight." "Against 100 ships, that is suicide." "Maybe, but it is also a message to the galaxy that humans do not give up, that we stand for something even if we cannot win." Was silent for a long moment, then he did something that surprised both of them. "Let me help you," he said. "What?" "I have spent my entire life serving an empire that does terrible things in the name of safety. I justified it. I told myself that stability was more important than justice, but I was wrong, and I am tired of being wrong." "What can you do?" "I have access to the Imperial communication networks. I can send a message to every world in the galaxy. I can tell them the truth about what is happening here. I can tell them that the Empire broke its promise of safe negotiation. I can tell them that the humans chose to stand and fight instead of running. Let the galaxy see what kind of choice your people make." Jin stared at the old in amazement. "They will kill you for this." "Probably, but I am old, Captain. I do not have many years left anyway. Let me use them for something that matters." The broadcast went out 3 hours before the fleet arrived. Counselor spoke to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. He told them everything. He told them about the negotiations, about the growing understanding between human and about the Emperor's betrayal. And then he introduced Captain Jin, who made one final statement. "I am speaking to everyone who has ever been told that they cannot fight back, to everyone who has been taught that resistance is hopeless, to every child who dreams of freedom but is afraid to hope." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was strong. "My people spent 800 years hiding. We survived, but we did not live. We existed in darkness, afraid to be seen, afraid to be found. That is no way to exist. Today, we choose something different. Today, we choose to stand. Not because we can win, but because standing is the right thing to do." The fleet arrived. 100 warships surrounded the 2 vessels at the negotiation point. Admiral himself commanded the operation. He had been waiting for this moment since the humans first appeared in his sector. "Fire on the human ship," he ordered. The weapons discharged. Hundreds of missiles and energy beams flew toward the Eternal Soul. And then they all missed. The human ship moved like nothing had ever seen. It twisted and turned through the barrage, somehow avoiding every shot. Its own weapons fired back, precise and deadly. In the first minute of combat, 3 ships were disabled. "Impossible," whispered. But it was not impossible. It was human. It was the product of 800 years of desperate innovation, of necessity driving invention, of a species that had learned to fight against overwhelming odds because they had no other choice. The battle lasted for 2 hours. When it ended, the Eternal Soul was damaged but still flying. 17 ships had been destroyed. 23 more were disabled. The rest had pulled back, afraid to continue the attack. And the entire galaxy had watched it happen. On stood before his gathered followers. There were 10,000 of them now, people who had watched the battle and finally believed that change was possible. "The humans showed us the way," he said. "Now it is our turn. Today we stop hiding. Today we fight." The first shots of the uprising were fired that night. Within a week, similar rebellions had broken out on 37 worlds. The galaxy was finally waking up. 6 months had passed since the battle at the negotiation point. The galaxy was a different place now. The empire was crumbling. What started as small rebellions on conquered worlds had grown into a full-scale revolution. They had liberated their planet and were helping their neighbors do the same. The ocean people of had risen against their overlords. The factory workers of had seized control of their production facilities. Every week, another world declared independence. Every day, the empire's territory shrank a little more. Emperor sat alone in his throne room. His advisors had stopped coming. His generals were too busy trying to hold back the tide of rebellion to attend meetings. His great palace, once full of activity, was now quiet and empty. He had gambled everything on destroying one human ship. He had lost. The Eternal Soul had become a legend. After the battle, it had disappeared back into the darkness, but its story spread across the galaxy. People talked about the ghost ship that could not be caught, the human vessel that had fought 100 enemies and survived. Children played games where they pretended to be Captain Jin and his crew. But the real Eternal Soul was not gone. It was working. In the months since the battle, Jin had been busy. He had made contact with resistance movements on dozens of worlds. He had shared human technology with those who needed it. He had helped coordinate attacks and supply runs. The cloaking system that once had been humanity's secret for survival was now being used to help others fight for their freedom. And he had done something else, something even more important. He had found the other humans. During the long centuries of hiding, the human survivors had scattered into small groups. They had lost contact with each other, each group believing they might be the only ones left. But Jin had used the Eternal Soul's advanced communications to search the darkness between galaxies. He had sent signals into the void, hoping someone would answer. They did. One by one, the lost human ships and stations had responded. There were more survivors than anyone had dared to hope. 37 vessels, 18 hidden stations, over 200,000 people who had clung to life in the darkness, waiting for something to change. Now something had changed. "Captain," reported, "all ships have arrived at the meeting point." Jin looked at the screen. For the first time in 800 years, the human fleet was gathered in one place. It was not a large fleet by galactic standards. 37 ships of various sizes and conditions. Many were held together by desperate repairs and hopeful prayers. But they were here. They were together. They were ready. "Open a channel to all ships," Jin ordered. When the channel was open, he spoke. "This is Captain Park Jin of the Eternal Soul. Thank you all for coming. I know some of you traveled a long way. I know some of you were afraid. I know many of you had given up hope of ever seeing another human ship." He paused, looking at the faces on his screen. Old faces and young faces, tired faces and hopeful faces, his people. 800 years ago, the Empire tried to destroy us. They failed. We survived in the darkness, alone and afraid, but we survived, and now everything is different. The galaxy is changing, the Empire is falling, worlds that were enslaved are becoming free, and we have a chance that our ancestors could only dream of, a chance to stop hiding, a chance to live again. A message came through from one of the other ships. It was an old woman, her face wrinkled with age but her eyes bright with tears. "Captain Jin, I am Grandmother Bin. I am 123 years old. I was born in the darkness. My parents were born in the darkness. I never thought I would see the day when humans could live in the light again." "You will see it, Grandmother," Jin promised. "We all will." The human fleet moved together toward the liberated territories. They were welcomed as heroes. The through celebrations in their honor. The people of sang songs that told the story of the ghost ship. Everywhere the humans went, they found friends who had been inspired by their example. Counselor had survived the battle. He had been rescued by rebel forces and taken to a safe location. Now he served as an advisor to the growing alliance of free worlds, using his knowledge of the Empire to help coordinate the liberation effort. When Jin met him again, the old embraced him like a brother. "You did it," said. "You changed everything." "We did it together," Jin replied. "Humans alone could not have sparked this revolution. It took all of us, every species that refused to accept oppression, working together." "What happens now? The Empire is weakened, but it is not destroyed, still has forces loyal to him. Then we finish what we started. We help every world that wants freedom to achieve it. We build an alliance of equals, where no species dominates the others, and we make sure that nothing like the Purge ever happens again." The final battle came 3 months later. Emperor had gathered his remaining loyal forces for one last stand at the capital world. It was a desperate gamble, but he had no other choice. If he lost, his empire would end forever. The Alliance fleet gathered outside the system. It was the largest gathering of ships the galaxy had ever seen. Fighters flew beside cruisers. Industrial ships had been converted into carriers, and at the heart of the formation was the human fleet, small but determined. Jin stood on the bridge of the Eternal Soul, looking at the enemy forces on his screen. The still had more ships. They still had more firepower, but they no longer had the will to fight. "Send a message to Emperor," Jin ordered. "Tell him this is his last chance to surrender. If he gives up now, we will spare his people. If he fights, we will destroy his fleet and take the capital anyway." The message was sent. For a long hour there was no response. Then slowly the ships began to power down their weapons. One by one they transmitted surrender signals. Emperor had refused to give the order himself. He had retreated to his throne room and locked the doors, unwilling to face the end of everything his people had built. His generals had made the decision for him. The war was over. In the years that followed, the galaxy rebuilt itself. The Empire was dissolved, replaced by a council where every species had an equal voice. The conquered worlds became free nations, working together in an alliance that respected the rights of all. And the humans finally came home. Not to Earth, which was still a burned ruin after 8 centuries, but to a new world, a beautiful planet in what had once been territory. They called it New Beginning, and it became the first human world since the destruction of there. Jin stood on the surface of New Beginning, feeling real wind on his face for the first time in his life. Around him, human children ran and played on real grass under a real sky. They laughed with a joy that their ancestors could only have imagined. Grandmother Bin stood beside him, her old face wet with tears. "I never thought I would feel this," she said. "A real world, a real son, after all these years. This is just the beginning, Jin said. We have so much work to do, so much to build, so many generations of lost time to make up for. We will do it, Bin said with certainty. We are human, we survive the darkness, we can do anything. Jin smiled and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were building their own futures. Other worlds were discovering what it meant to be free. The galaxy was healing from centuries of tyranny. And humanity, the species that had been hunted to near extinction, the people who had hidden in the darkness for 800 years, had emerged into the light. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as partners, as builders, as friends. They had proven something that the Empire had never understood. Power was not about domination. It was not about control. It was about connection, about helping others, about standing together against darkness. That was what made humans special, not their weapons, not their technology, not their survival skills. It was their ability to hope when there was no reason to hope, their willingness to fight for others, their capacity to forgive old enemies and build new friendships. Captain Park Jin had started with one ship and 400 crew members. He had ended with an alliance of thousands of worlds and billions of beings. And it had all begun because he refused to run, because he refused to hide, because he believed that sometimes standing up for what was right was more important than survival. The children playing nearby would grow up in a galaxy where humans were not legends or ghosts. They would be citizens. They would be neighbors. They would be part of something greater than themselves. And that was the greatest victory of all.